Hi friends, welcome to Raising Lifelong Learners. I'm your host, Colleen Kessler, and this is the podcast where I encourage you to trust yourself and your differently wired kiddos as you help cultivate their curiosity, encourage them to discover the world around them, embrace who they are wired to be, all while helping them discover their passions, interests, and raise them to become the amazing adults they're meant to be. Hey, welcome back. This is episode 301. I'm so glad that you are here. This is the last episode before the holidays, and we will be back same time, same place in January, starting January 7th. So I hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful holiday season, and you keep in touch. I want to see all of the things that you guys are up to over the holidays. All right, today we are talking about how to manage and be successful with your kiddos' intensity over the holidays and over those holiday gatherings. It's a shorter episode, but packed with ideas and suggestions. I just want you to know before you get started, you are not alone. Intense kiddos are even more intense during the holidays, but you've got this. You are the perfect parent for your kiddo, and they are the perfect kiddo. So pop those earbuds in. Say a special thanks to CTC Math for supporting us all of this time and supporting us going into the new year. We appreciate them. If you're looking for a new math program, CTC is the one to check out at ctcmath.com. All right, pop those earbuds in, go for a walk, have some hot cocoa and a peppermint stick, and let's get on with today's episode. Hey there. Okay, so if mealtimes sometimes feel like a hostage negotiation, like you've made 3 dinners, nobody's happy, you're not alone. Today, we're going to talk about what it is like when picky eating comes into play, when there are texture or sensitivity issues, and how we can help our kids who struggle with mealtimes be more open as we go with some of the choices that we make. We're going to use a sensory first plan kind of approach. We're going to focus on calm bodies, gentle exposure, zero pressure, and keep our child in the forefront of our mind as we're working through these challenges. This is number 5 in a 5-episode series all about sensory challenges, and there is a wonderful download that you can get that goes along with all of the episodes in this series, the Home Sensory Diet Planner. And you can find that at any of the show notes for any of these 5 episodes over at raisinglifelonglearners.com/podcast. So check that out if you haven't had a chance to already. Download that so you have it to help you through these challenges when it comes to our sensory kids. All right, we're going to focus this episode on picky eating, on meal times, and you're going to leave with kind of a regulation routine, a no pressure plate system, and concrete kind of scripts to help you with a plan to get your kids through some of the challenges, get you through some of the challenges that go through this. Here's the thing I want you to remember. This is general information. This is not medical advice. If you see any kind of persistent challenges with your kids, there are growth concerns, there's choking or gagging when it comes to meals, or you suspect reflux, GI issues, frid, or any other kind of serious complications when it comes to eating, I really highly encourage you to seek help from your pediatrician and then follow up with an occupational therapist, a speech language pathologist, a dietitian, somebody who can be on your team to avoid any medical complications. The ideas and suggestions that I have in here are like first line, and with the understanding that there is not a serious underlying medical concern. If at any point you feel that your kids are not gaining the weight that they need to gain, they're not growing in the way that they need to grow, or that there's a more serious issue, it is imperative that you seek the help of a medical professional. And I just want you to remember that seeking the help of a medical professional is not failure. It doesn't mean you're a bad parent. It doesn't mean you couldn't feed your kid. It just means you're recognizing that you need more support than you have that you can offer by yourself. And that's actually a success. That's a win. Admitting when we need more support is a huge win. And I think too many people in our society focus on seeking help as a failure and not the win it actually is. It is brave and it's a huge success. So if at any point you feel that you need more support, get it, and you will be showing your kids that it's never, ever a problem to ask for help when you need it. All right, so let's focus first on why picky eating sometimes happens with neurodivergent kids. What's going on? What's like the underlying thing? It could be a tactile or oral sensory sensitivity. Sometimes textures, wet, mixed, stringy, whatever. Temperatures, smells. Sometimes those things equal danger to a nervous system, especially a neurodivergent one. They process things in a different way than average people do. And so it triggers their fight, flight, or freeze response. It could be because of interoception differences, mixed or muted signals for hunger or fullness. And so this creates an erratic intake. Your kiddo's body might not be able to differentiate between full and hungry in a consistent way, which leads to an erratic intake. Maybe they're eating too much at certain times and eating too little at certain times because they just don't know how to gauge their own responses. It could be attributed to past negative experiences. Gagging, vomiting, pressure at the table could trigger anxiety, which then could trigger them to have struggles in other ways. It could be an executive function load. Meals are multi-step. And when our kids struggle with executive function challenges, the sitting, the organizing of utensils, the sequencing, the making choices between which portion of the meal to eat first, and then the cleanup can all be overwhelming to our kids. It could also be a predictability issue. Some of our kids really thrive on sameness. And when there's new foods, this equals new surprises. And sameness feels safe. It's why a lot of our kids who struggle with eating issues have safe foods that they go to again and again. There have been a couple kids in my own home who have eaten the same thing for lunch again and again and again until they've gotten completely sick of it and then never wanted to eat it again. And so that creates all sorts of other issues, right? You're buying the things that you know your kids will eat, and all of a sudden they're not interested in that anymore. And so they don't eat the thing that you've thought was safe all along. Remember that in these situations, your kiddo isn't being difficult. Their body is actually protecting them. So what we want to try to do is lower the sensory demand, add some predictability, and invite curiosity. We don't want to bribe them, but we also don't want to battle with them. So we want to invite them into the challenge. And we're going to talk about very specific ways that we can do that in this episode. Before we go on any further, though, I just want to talk about a couple red flags that you might see that would indicate that you might want to get professional help. So if you notice your kiddo who struggles with their eating, you've attributed it to picky eating for so long, but you're starting to see that there's weight loss, there's poor growth, they have fewer than like 20 acceptable foods, safe foods. They're dropping entire categories of foods like all meats or all fruits or all vegetables or all things that are yellow. You want to maybe get them assessed by an occupational therapist. A pediatrician would probably be your first line here, and then get an evaluation by an occupational therapist or an eating specialist. Maybe they have frequent gagging or choking when they're eating certain kinds of foods or textures. They're complaining of pain, or they have some severe constipation or reflux, and they just seem like they're in constant distress at meals. This is definitely a time that you want to seek professional help. And then maybe you have a past experience with AFRID, avoidant restrictive food intake, or you suspect it. You're doing an amazing job by noticing. And what you want to do when you are noticing these red flags is you want to make an appointment with your pediatrician, and you want to bring some anecdotal information in with you to the pediatrician so you can talk about the things that you've tried, the things that you're noticing, the triggers perhaps. What are the safe foods that your kids are eating now? What were safe foods that maybe they've dropped? So keep really good records, but seek help when you can. I am not an expert on food issues, on eating challenges. So I'm offering suggestions to try, but I'm really cautioning you throughout this episode to seek help if the things that you've tried in the past aren't working, or if you're noticing any of these issues like reflux, like vomiting, like gagging, like choking, like weight loss, like growth issues. So really make sure that you're not tipping into that zone before you go any further with the strategies in this episode. Okay, now that I've gotten those red flags off, note them down, keep a diary of the different foods that your kids are eating and the triggers that are tripping them up, and get help when you need help. In the meantime, some of the things that you can do to try at home is you can start with a calm bodies first approach. Do a 3-minute pre-meal routine. Regulation lowers the tactile and oral defensiveness. So this can go back to some of our previous episodes. When you're regulating the body, you're giving them some input, you're using your sensory diet plan to get their bodies in a calm state within the green state so that they can sit down and approach mealtime. So you could pick 2 of these maybe for a total of 2 or 3 minutes. Do some heavy work like 10 wall push-ups, 15 chair push-ups, carry the napkins to the table, carry laundry upstairs and come back, and then maybe some oral motor like wake up, have them sip water through a straw, crunch on a carrot or a pretzel to get that crunchy sensation to warm up their mouth. Follow whatever your family's dietary plan is for that. If pretzels or salty snacks are not part of it, then use some crunchy fruits or vegetables. And then focus on breath and posture. Do some box breathing. You can find information out about box breathing both on my site, in my sensory cards, my sensory strategies card deck that's available as a download in my shop, or just Googling box breathing. You could have your kids put their feet on a footrest so it's elevated slightly, and just to help them like work on their posture to give their bodies the sensation that they're ready to go. And you can tell your kids, we do 2 to 3 minutes of body wake up, and then we eat. We get our bodies set first, and then we eat our food second. So you're normalizing it and you're doing it with them. Then I want you to step into a no pressure plate approach to eating. You as a parent get to decide the what, when, and where you're going to eat. So you're going to eat dinner at this time, and you're going to eat it at the dining room table or the kitchen table or the kitchen island. Your kiddo gets to decide if they're eating, what they're eating, and how much they're eating. So this is like a division of responsibility. So your kiddos know that they have some autonomy over their plate. Their choices are like blocked within certain choices. So maybe you're setting up the plate and you've got 2 to 3 safe foods on the plate. So this is really important. When your kids struggle with eating, we really want to make sure that we're covering their hunger in a safe and appropriate way and giving them as much nutrient-dense food as we possibly can in a way that they'll take it. So choose 2 to 3 things that your kiddo reliably eats that are on their safe food lists that are nutrient dense, and put some of those on their plate. This is what's going to cover their hunger. They're probably going to eat it, and they're going to get the nutrients that they need at that meal to be successful. Then put some learning foods on their plate, 1 or 2 tiny little exposures to things that they've struggled with in the past, things that you want to introduce them to. Maybe it's like a single noodle if they haven't been able to handle that texture before, 1 pea, a crumb of chicken, a little corner of a piece of garlic toast. Maybe it's like a little spoonful of mashed potatoes, a little petri dish size. I can't remember exactly like what it would be called. Just a little mini dish, like condiment dish of soup if your kiddos haven't been able to have that kind of texture. 1 or 2 learning foods that you are encouraging them to try. And then add like a no thank you bowl. I know my kids, I've got a couple who have had different food sensitivities over times, and one who very adamantly does not like tomatoes. And this child doesn't mind tomatoes themselves if like it's blended in broth or in spaghetti sauce. But when there are chunks of tomatoes, this child picks every single one of them out and makes a pile. For a long while, this child would put the pile in a napkin, or like individually walk over to the trash and throw each individual tomato square away. And what you could do in a situation like that is have a no thank you bowl on every plate, like one of those little condiment dishes again. And they can place anything in there. No comments, no consequences. Whatever it is, they're not going to be able to eat. And we get rid of the one more bite rule, or you have to finish within a certain amount of time. Conversation around the table does not include food commentary for these kids. We're not going to talk about what we want them to try, what they're thinking about it. We are going to say, here's your plate. Here's your no thank you bowl. Put whatever you need in it that you're not going to eat and be done. And then steer the conversation around other things. This is a great time for you to open up conversations. There are conversation starters on my website. If you're a member of the Learners Lab, we have conversation cards in the archives of the Creative Thinking Lab. And there might be some conversation. I know that there's some mealtime games on a post on the website. I'll link that in the show notes. And then I'll link any other conversation cards or dinner games that I can find. This is something we used to do a lot when my kids were much younger. It seems that as the kids get older, meal times are a little bit more quick and not as, you don't need as much to get them engaged in the conversation. They're telling you about their day, you're asking them. But when my kids were little, we played dinner games all the time. Or we did table topics and conversation starters. Would you rather? So I'll link to a bunch of those in the show notes. I have some that you can print. I have some that you could purchase and print and cut apart. We've done a family conversation challenge or a family connection challenge the last 2 years. And if you join the free space over in our Circle community, the Raising Lifelong Learners community, it's off social media. And the paid portion of the Circle community is where the Learners Lab is hosted. But there's one section that is open and free to anybody, and I'll link that in the show notes. You can download our past Family Connection Challenge. One of the days was table topics, games, so you could print those as well.
Okay, so let's talk about math. Specifically, let's talk about finding a program that actually works for your unique homeschoolers. In our house, we've been using CTC Math for years, and even though I am so appreciative that they sponsor this podcast, I am a paying customer. I'm still a paying customer even with their sponsorship because it's just that good, and I love supporting great companies with great programs. With 2 kids still at home, both with very different learning needs, CTC Math has been the flexible and dependable solution that I keep coming back to. One of my kiddos needs more time to process math concepts, and I love that she can move through the lessons at her own pace without feeling rushed or behind. My other kiddo, he flies. He jumps straight to the end of unit tests to see what he already knows, and then we only focus on the lessons that fill the gaps. That kind of customization is gold when you're homeschooling gifted or twice exceptional kids. CTC Math gives you the access to every grade level, from kindergarten through 12th grade with your subscription, so that your child can accelerate, review, or jump around based on their own needs, not based on some rigid curriculum structure. And because it's video-based with clear instruction and auto-graded lessons and quizzes, it frees me up to support my kids without being chained to a textbook, teacher's manual, or whiteboard. So whether your child needs more time or is racing ahead, you can tailor it all with CTC Math. Check it out at ctcmath.com. You will see why so many homeschool families trust it. And if you've got quirky math learners like I do, I think you're going to love it. If you have any questions about CTC, like I said, we've been using it for years in our homeschool, and I encourage you to reach out and ask me any questions that you have. If you do pop over there, let them know that I sent you, and let them know that you appreciate their ongoing support of homeschoolers everywhere, especially those of you here at Raising Lifelong Learners. All right, let's get back to today's episode.
You also want your kids to know that it is okay to not eat everything on their plate. You want them to feel comfortably full and let themselves be done when they're done. You also want to let them know that you respect their choices, but you're also not going to be able to make a bunch of different meals every single time. I would tell my kids that I'm not a short order cook, so I'm not going to be able to make individual meals all the time. That said, I do respect my kids who, in the past, it's not as much of a problem now as it once was, did not like their foods touching. For example, when I'd make a stir fry for the rest of the family, for the kids who didn't like their foods touching, I would pull out some of the meat before I stir fried it in the sauce and with the vegetables. Those particular kids much preferred raw vegetables. So on their plates, I would put a deconstructed stir fry. I would put some of the cooked meat, some of the plain white rice, and then some of the raw vegetables before I stir fried them all together. We were all eating the same things, but my kids who couldn't handle the foods all mixed together were eating theirs in a safe way. So try deconstructed components whenever textures mixing is tough for your kids. Some of the things that you can say to your kiddos, here are some scripts that you can use. You can say, you never have to eat anything. You can explore, or use your no thank you bowl. You could say, we're all food scientists. Notice the texture, notice the temperature, notice the smell. Let me know what your body prefers. And then get them involved if you can with some of the choices of meal planning so that they have a say and they're feeling empowered to make those choices and make new decisions for themselves. All right. Now we're going to try to, as our kids are getting used to calming their bodies first before they sit down, having a no pressure plate, we want to try to help them work their way up to more challenging textures or move from one safe food to like a near neighbor in tiny baby steps. One of the strategies that we can use when we're trying to do that is a texture ladder or food chaining, where we're helping our kids make connections from one food to another until they're able to eat a wider variety of foods. Okay, so how do we do this? How do we use texture ladders and food chaining? So first, what I want you to do is list out the top 5 safe foods for your kiddos. If your kids struggle with picky eating, list out their top 5 safe foods. The brand, the shape, the temperature. Pick one of those to use as a chain or a ladder this week, and then change one property at a time. Size, shape, brand, cook method, temperature, dip. For example, if we're working on like a crunchy chain, we're going to go from like cracker to toast to like grilled cheese bits. So maybe their safe food is like a plain cracker. We're going to move from a plain cracker to some thin toast chips, like very toasted, crunchy toast. And then we're going to try moving after a couple of days to toast with a little bit of cheese shred melted on top. So now we're introducing the cheese to the toast, which is similar to what the cracker was. And then we're going to try to gradually move them to a centimeter square of a grilled cheese sandwich without the crust on it. So it's very like texturally similar all throughout the centimeter or inch squared. And then we're going to move to a 2 centimeter square, and then so on and so forth. So moving them up from plain crackers to plain toast to toast with a little bit of cheese, just shredded on top, to grilled cheese sandwiches in small bites to bigger bites to the whole sandwich. You could do like a chicken chain. So maybe your kiddos are only able or willing to eat. I had a friend whose kiddo was only able and willing to eat the Dino chicken nuggets from Costco. We want to move them like from nuggets to baked tenders to rotisserie chicken. So we could start with that dinosaur nugget. Then we could try that same brand, but like air fried. So it's a little crispier. And then we could go to baked chicken tenders on a plate. So we're going to give them like cut up pieces of the chicken tenders. And then we want to move to a fork size chicken tender, baked chicken tender piece. And then we're going to move to a piece of rotisserie chicken, like a string of it, the size of like your baby nail. And then move up every couple of days to a bigger piece of rotisserie chicken. So you're moving them from the crispy chicken nuggets to baked chicken tenders, like pieces, to rotisserie shredded chicken. So you're getting different textures of chicken going. Maybe your kiddos struggle with smooth things that have like chunks in them. So start with like plain vanilla yogurt, move to like yogurt with 1 teaspoon of a smoothie mixed into it, then to sips of smoothies, then to applesauce with a tiny speck of fruit in it, to then like a chunky applesauce. Maybe we're going to move our kids through some different vegetables. So we start with like veggie straws because they can handle veggie, very small shredded carrot strips and carrot straws or celery straws. And then we move them to thin roasted, like sweet potato fries or something like that, to then thicker fries, to then small roasted cubes with salt, and then maybe a familiar dip. You could also give them micro exposure steps with no eating required. They could smell it, they could lick it, they could put it up to their lips like a kiss, they could touch it to their teeth, they could try a tiny crumb, and then they could spit it in a napkin, and then they could go to a tiny chew, and then swallow if they're ready for it. We always want to pair the exposure that we're giving them with safe food and water. So we want them to have the exposure as they're going down the chains, but then we also want them to always have safe foods accessible to them and water accessible to them. And you could ask them, what's one change that you want to try this week? Do you want to try the shape? Do you want to try the dip? Do you want to try the brand? Do you want to try a different type of chicken? And then you can remind them, food scientists can spit things out. Spitting things out means that your brain tried something new, but still kept you safe. So this is not a quick changeover. When we're dealing with our kiddos who are very picky eaters or who have very strong adverse sensory challenges when it comes to food, we want to make sure they're getting enough of their safe foods to feel safe, to feel full, to feel satisfied, to get the nutrients they need. And then we want to incorporate and introduce different things throughout the week, giving it a little bit of a try. All right, so let's talk about our mealtime environment and some tools that we can use to help us out when it comes to helping our kids try different foods. If our kiddos are overloaded with sensory, coming in from all different areas, we could dim our overhead lights, we could use a lamp, we could use a candle at the dinner table, we can reduce kitchen noise, we can ventilate strong smells. If the kitchen smell is very strong, we could go eat in the dining room or a different room. We can seat ourselves away from cooking odors if that's a trigger. We could also use utensil and plate hacks. We could use, for our kids who can't eat things that when they're touching, we could use divided plates to separate textures. We could use tiny tasting spoons like toothpicks, skewers for fun, like pokes at our food. When my kids were very young, we used bento box style lunches and dinners, and we had lots of different fun food picks that we would use. I'd cut things up very small, and they'd be able to use their picks to pick up and eat their food. You could have a condiment flight, like 3 dips in silicone cups, ranch, yogurt, ketchup, or whatever. One of my kids' favorite memories is my husband doing a meatball fondue with the kids when I was out of town. He basically took a bag of frozen meatballs and baked them in the oven and took anything out of the refrigerator that could potentially resemble a dip and put it all out at the kitchen table. And they skewered, all of the meatballs were still on the baking sheet in the middle of the table, and they like skewered it with a fork and dipped it in whatever their dip of choice was. So make it interesting and unique for them so it's novel and they can try different dips. Have it be temperature controlled. Try foods cold or room temperature or warm. Many neurodivergent kiddos prefer predictable temperatures, so they might not want something too hot or too cold. So figure out what their optimal temperature is and try to serve your meal at that. And then deconstruct everything. Tacos, pasta, salad. Put the components in their own corners and let them build it themselves if they want to, or eat it all separately if they want to. Just like the stir fry I mentioned earlier, we often have deconstructed meals here at the house. Part of it is because it's become easier for me, but also part of it is because it gives my kids autonomy over what they include in their meals. So just for example, last night, I steamed a bunch of broccoli. I made some Korean kind of barbecue style beef, ground beef, and plain white rice. And I just left all 3 in their bowls on the kitchen island and gave everybody a bowl to fill. We have baked potato bars often, where I'll bake potatoes in an Instant Pot, and I'll put out different toppings, different proteins, different vegetables that they can top their baked potatoes with. So deconstruct things when possible, because it gives kids a chance to really focus in on what is safe for them so that they can eat what they need to eat and what they're comfortable eating. Some things that you can tell your kiddos just to remind them that they are safe and that their eating is safe. You can tell them you never have to eat it. You can ask them, which safe food do you want more of? You can say, do you want to smell it or move it to your bowl? Okay, take a texture check. Is it smooth, crunchy, or stringy? We want to make sure our kids have some say in what they're eating, which is why we want to constantly offer them safe foods in addition to the things that we want them to try. Now, I know what some of you are saying. We're in the holiday season. What's going to happen when I go to our family gatherings and people are criticizing my child or saying we're too easy on them, or why don't they ever eat anything? And I'm going to encourage you, first of all, you know your child best. And while much of what other people say to us comes from a place of caring, because they really do care about their nieces and their nephews and their grandchildren, and they're just speaking up things in the way that they know how to speak. It doesn't excuse the criticism, but it does give at least a lens through which you can see it. So I want to say, first of all, that they're probably not meaning, most of the time, they're probably not meaning harm. They're just concerned. But I want to encourage you to stand your ground. Do your child best. Your child is your primary job, and keeping them safe, healthy, and happy is up to you, and you know them best. So you can say, if you need something to say, you can simply say, we follow a no pressure approach. Please don't ask my child to take one more bite. Curiosity counts as much as success. Or we are feeding our kids in the way that we feel best, and we just would appreciate you letting us worry about our kids' eating habits, and go from there. And then you could also pull them aside and you can say, I'm happy to talk about what's going on away from my kids if you ever are concerned enough that you want to know what's going on. But we don't like to talk about food and food issues in front of our kids because we don't want to make any problems greater than they are. And just leave it at that. You want to try to avoid and help others avoid things like, oh, he's such a good eater, or, oh, you got to take 3 more bites for dessert, or shaming, only babies eat that, or come on, you can do this, you're a big boy. We want to make sure that we are protecting our kids. So if we know that food is going to be an issue at a family gathering or another gathering, make sure that your kids eat before you go. And then that way they don't have to worry about it too much when they're there. Or make sure you're sitting next to your kids. You're not relegating them to the kids' table. You're with them. This might be uncomfortable. It might raise some eyebrows. But you know what? The bottom line is you're there for your kiddo, and that's what's important. I've told this before. We had some issues like this when my kids were very young. And my extended family at the time was not very receptive to the things that we were trying and we were working on with our kids. And so we stopped going to the large family gatherings at the holidays. We didn't go to the Thanksgiving dinner where 30 or 40 family members, extended family members, and peripheral family members went to. We started having that just ourselves. I would cook a turkey. I would make the stuffing and the mashed potatoes and the different sides that my kids liked. And usually my father-in-law would come over, and it would be just small, just the 6 of us and my father-in-law. And occasionally others would pop by, but most of the time it was just us. And at first, my extended family did not understand. And they may still not understand, however, whatever, 20 years later it is. But my job was to protect my kids, and it was becoming an issue and causing more issues than it was worth. And it wasn't the family dynamics that we wanted to instill in our kids. And so we made that difficult decision to have large holiday meals at home where we could control the atmosphere. And then we made a point to go see our family members around the holidays. So we'd pop into my grandmother's or my aunts and uncles at different times during the season. And we go out for Christmas Eve, but we're home for Christmas Day. So we've made these adjustments in our family for years and years so that my kids and their eating can be safe. And so you need to do what you need to do. And that may be stepping back for a little while. And it may be eating before you go. And it may be packing up your own meal for your kids to eat while you're there. Whatever it is that you need to do, I want you to know it's okay. You are allowed to be the parent your kid needs. And it doesn't matter what others think because they're not living in your shoes day to day. So trust yourself. You are the best parent for your kiddo, I promise you. Let's talk about some different profiles that our kids may have and the adaptations that we could use to help those specific types of kids. So let's talk about kiddos with attention challenges. These are our kiddos who seek novelty, who are hyperactive, who may not be able to sit at the dinner table. This is where we want to front load protein and complex carbohydrates at breakfast in particular. We want to make sure our kids are getting enough protein and enough complex carbs that are going to give them lasting energy throughout the day, early on in their day. And then we want to give them an opportunity to eat mini plates every few hours because they're just going all the time. We want to keep water available to them. And then we want to make sure that when we are sitting down to dinner or breakfast, that they have a seat with a footrest or something to fidget with while they're at the table so that they can let that fidget part of their brain fidget while they're focused on their meal. For our kiddos who need the same thing, maybe they are autistic, maybe they are just rigid thinkers, but they love sameness. We want to make sure that we keep our brands, our shapes predictable. We only want to change one variable at a time. These might be the kiddos who benefit from predictable meal plans, meatless Mondays, Taco Tuesdays, some kind of, Italian on Wednesdays, some kind of snack plate on Thursdays, and then Fridays be a fend for yourself kind of day. They want to know what to expect. So you might have a meal plan posted on the side of your refrigerator, or you might have a visual menu that they're used to. You want to batch cook favorites, freeze in the same size portions so your kids know what to expect. If your kiddos have anxiety, you want to use low demand language. You choose. Smell it or move it, put it in the no thank you bowl, give it a try if you want to. Eat your safe foods. You want to give them multiple choices, some safe foods, some curiosity foods, and then allow them to opt out if they need to. If your kiddos have oral motor fatigue or fine motor challenges, you want to give them smaller bites, softer textures, alternate sips. Maybe they can have a smoothie as well as water to drink at the table. If chewing is tough, though, we want to make sure that we're consulting a speech language pathologist or an occupational therapist to see what's going on. And then if your kiddos are showing constipation, reflux, or again, weight loss, really encourage you to bring your concerns to your pediatrician. Normalize hydration. Make sure they're seeing you drink water regularly. Incorporate fiber in your meals that your child will tolerate. And then lots of movement after meals. Some of the things that might be struggles that you could troubleshoot, food jags, maybe they drop a former favorite. Stay neutral. Wait a couple weeks, offer a neighboring food from the food chains we talked about earlier, or bring it back and reintroduce it in a couple of months. Maybe there's a meltdown brewing. End the exposure, regulate, serve safe foods for a couple of meals, and then try the chain next time if you're trying new foods. If your kiddos lick something they're trying and then they say, yuck, that's success. Praise them. Hey, that's great. You tried it. You know you don't really like it. Let's have a sip of water and we'll move on. If the siblings comment, if your kiddos' siblings are commenting, remind them we don't talk about each other's plates and we're here to support one another. Make sure you're normalizing the conversations about we all have different needs, and so we're meeting our needs in the way that we can. And then if budget's a constraint, use frozen vegetables, use frozen fruits, use rotisserie chicken, use store brands for different step downs. Okay, here's what I want you to do over the next couple of weeks. I want you to make sure, if you haven't already, you print the Home Sensory Diet Planner. It'll be over in the show notes for this episode and all the previous episodes in this series. And then add to your sensory diet planner the 2-minute pre-meal routine that you are incorporating from this week's episode. Then I want you to get a small notebook and I want you to make a safe foods inventory. Brands, textures, different things your kiddos like, temperature they like, and then choose one of those safe foods to kind of food chain next week and incorporate like 4 steps across a couple of weeks to chain that food to try to move your kiddos to a different texture or a different type of that same food. Use the no pressure plate with your kiddos and a no thank you bowl daily so they have the autonomy to choose a safe food if they want, choose a curious food if they want, and then say no thank you as they go along. And then in your kind of diary where you're keeping a list of their safe foods, I want you to log exposures. Jot down when they try new things. Celebrate trying, not intake. We don't want to celebrate, hey, you ate that whole big chunk of rotisserie chicken. We want to celebrate, my gosh, you tried rotisserie chicken. That's amazing. I'm so proud of you for stepping out of your comfort zone. By day 14, we want to see if your child can tolerate one new step on the chain. They were able to move to a toast chip, or they were able to lick the rotisserie chicken string, or they accepted applesauce with a couple chunks of apples in it. And we want to celebrate that success, and then we want to move them further and further. Here's the thing. Moving past really picky eating is a process. It's not an immediate thing, and it just feels so big. So if you need support, I highly recommend an occupational therapist for this. They can really help your kiddo out. And if that's not something that's in the cards for you right now, then make sure that you're doing small baby steps. You're really monitoring their health and taking action with a pediatrician when you find that they're not taking in enough food. Make sure you're front loading with good proteins, good complex carbohydrates, and safe foods, and encourage them to try. If you're a member of the Learners Lab, come share your successes with us inside. Start a thread. Tell us what's working. Tell us what you need support with. We're there to help you. If you're not a member of the lab, you can join for a month. No questions asked. You can join for a year if you love it. You can always upgrade or downgrade your membership, but we will link to it in the show notes. It is open right now, and we'd love to have you. I can't wait to hear about all of the different things that you're trying and the successes that you've had with your meal plans over the week. This has been a really fun series for me. The sensory challenges that a lot of us face when we have neurodivergent kids. If there's a topic that I missed that you think I need to add in, please go over to the show notes for this episode, click on the link for the contact form, and let me know what kinds of episodes, what kinds of topics you would like to hear about. I am in the process of planning out the episodes well into 2026 and 27. I would love to hear guests that you'd like to hear on the podcast, as well as different topics that you'd like me to cover. In the meantime, I hope you have a great week with your kids. I hope that you have all sorts of mealtime successes, and I can't wait to talk to you about them. I'll see you same time, same place next week for another great episode. Thank you so much for all of your support. If you know somebody who could use some of the tips in this episode, please share with them. Forward this episode to them. Encourage them to subscribe. Forward the email that you get regarding this, and share a rating or review on any of the podcast apps that you use to listen, because it really helps the algorithm see value in it and gets new listeners involved. All right, I'll talk to you soon. Have a great week. Bye for now.